Welcome, everyone, to RB1 Colon, a fantasy football podcast, part of the Fake Teams podcast channel. I am the rom-com aficionado, Damian Harris, truther, and say Christian McCaffrey would go 1,000 before it was cool. Your humble host, Pete Rogers. And I am joined by all of the guys. We have the champion of doggos everywhere. You heard it here first. And proponent for a Jon Snow hair product line, resident old man Clark Barnes, the captain of the Buccaneers bandwagon, proud father of Quentin Nelson, and ring bearer at Aaron Rodgers and Danica Patrick's wedding, the weatherman Jordan Smith, and finally, fantasy football's premier internet doctor, Larry Fitzgerald's lone admonisher, and the number 2 Walter Sobchak, but the number 1 Tarzan, the ginger normal man, Nick Bodiford. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Pete.
Good, man.
Excellent.
How was everyone's Thanksgiving? Did you manage to come away with not only delightful memories, but mass quantities of turkey and other good Thanksgiving Day meals?
It was my first year being reclusive and not attending all of my so I have a ton of family in the Seattle area. Like,
humble brag.
My parents divorced when I was young. And
so
I have sometimes like 3 or 4 Thanksgivings. And this year I was just like, no, I'm going to hang out with my grandma for a little bit. And then I'm doing my thing with my girlfriend. And that is it. I am taking a me day.
It was
awesome.
That's a good Thanksgiving right there.
Yeah, rather uneventful. Got to hang out with the family, enjoyed it. And fortunately, no news to report. So that's always a good family gathering.
Always a positive family gathering.
I just hung out in the DMV. I'll be going like home for Christmas and then to my girlfriend's family in California at the same time. So we're just like not leaving the area for Thanksgiving to turn around and do it in like 2 weeks. So
that's fair. Yeah, it does feel like a lot when they come pretty much, a month apart. And I went back to Boston for my fam's Thanksgiving, which was a big whole ordeal. That side, it's my favorite holiday, but that side we celebrate. It's like 45 to 60 of us. And we were doing, unlike Clark, there's lots of reports from this. Primarily the fact that I learned that bread rolls can be used as weapons and can hurt when they're thrown at you. So shout out to my mother who was chucking bread rolls at me during Thanksgiving.
The Oracle.
The Oracle.
The Oracle got violent. We should take a moment to acknowledge, though. Did you guys ever? This actually came up over Thanksgiving time with my family, the day after or whatever, where we were discussing Russell Wilson's old bun endeavor. Were you guys familiar with the company that he temporarily was sponsored by, the like bread roll company?
No, I just knew about his body curing bubbles.
Right. Yeah. So go look this up. No joke. He partnered with a bread roll company called Eat the Ball, and it is little footballs.
Oh, hell yes.
You can find the footage of them filming a commercial for it, and it is excruciatingly uncomfortable. The guy who owns the company is trying to be very buddy with him. He is not into it. It is super bad. But yeah, anyway, if you need frozen bread balls from Safeway, go look for Eat the Ball.
I'm just surprised that you make the distinction to call them bread rolls, because we always just say that that's just a roll.
That's true. Well, we just yeah.
But you got your lobster rolls up there.
Yeah, you got all kinds of rolls out there. Got all kinds back on the East Coast. That is a brilliant story that Russell Wilson. What an attempt to do something clever and creative with a long stable by turning it into a football and having it just fail miserably. Go work, Russ. You do you. I hope he talks about it today in the post game after Monday Night Football. That'd be good. Let's just jump right into week. What are we? 13 fantasy MVPs. Jordan, why don't you start us off? Who's your fantasy MVP for week 13?
My fantasy MVP for week 13. I didn't know we were doing fantasy MVPs. I thought we were going into the awards. Skip me. Go to somebody else.
Okay. Clark, take over.
In honor of Lamar Jackson not having his finest game, I would like to take this opportunity to celebrate the real fantasy MVPs out there, the commissioners. who run these leagues and put up with a bunch of grown people's bullshit for absolutely nothing. To all the good commissioners out there, you're the real MVPs. Thank you for all your hard work.
Well said. I thought you were going to go with Deshaun Watson and make this a really awkward moment in the podcast where I have to face you after the Texans take down the Patriots.
I was going to make you bring it up.
Savagery at its finest.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, well done. Your mind manipulation is at an all-time high, Clark.
I just want to echo Clark's point. I think that's astoundingly astute. A good commissioner can make a league, and a bad commissioner can break it, and it impacts you for months. So yes, props to all of the good ones out there. Shame to all of the bad ones. My MVP though for week 13 is Devontae Parker. Entering Monday night, he's the overall wide receiver 1 in scoring this week in half-point PPR. It's a breakout that some of us saw many years ago, and then everyone saw a couple of years ago, has finally occurred. It is amazing. He's like barely being started in over 50% of leagues. I don't get it, but the dude's the real deal, and he has the perfect friggin' quarterback. I wish that this was, like 6 years ago, so we could get a slightly more spry Ryan Fitzpatrick. You know what I mean? Like Fitz was never going to be a phenomenal quarterback, but if we could have gotten them in his prime together and gotten them in a system of like, you know what, interceptions, let's not worry about it.
Let's just keep checking it.
Bruce Arians was coaching the team, it just some big like downfield aerial attack. It just would have been so much fun. But take what we can get now while we watch this goofy ass team just launch bombs to a good receiver. Anyway, yeah, Devontae Parker.
Yeah, Fitzmagic is my MVP because not only did he have a big week, he was the QB3 as of when we're recording this, but he turned Devontae Parker into the wide receiver 1 this year, or this year. One can only hope. But yeah, that Devontae Parker has been a beautiful emergence this season.
One of my worst takes, and I want to preference this because we're going to probably brag about some really good takes that we have for this season. But one of my worst takes ever was back in that Devontae Parker draft. I thought he was the best receiver in that draft class. And that draft class had Amari Cooper. So I'm really, really glad that he is having a good time out there. But I'm also very worried that this is how he tricks one team into giving him like $50 million guaranteed and then reverts back to under 900 yards a year.
And tricks all of us into drafting him like in the 4th round as a wide receiver 2.
Yeah, I was thinking about his ADP the other day. It's going to be nuts. But I think they've got him. I think Roto World, their pod that came out last night, said that he has another year on his deal and it's $5 million. So like they're going to be able to get a long look at him for a very cheap amount of money.
I hope it's awesome and that it just took like a good coach to finally coax whatever that talent that was very evident there out of him.
I just like to think back to my day when players had time to develop, and it was normal for like the 3rd year to be the good year that wide receivers happened. So I'm not saying that Devontae Parker has hit his stride and he's going to lead the league constantly, but I do like to give people a little time to develop. And so, yeah, we'll talk more about Devontae later.
Yeah, that timeline has drastically accelerated in the NFL as to when people should expect you to be ready to go. Jordan, do you have a fantasy MVP? Speaking of being ready to go.
I do. I'm super ready right now. Fantasy MVP for the week, Mr. Darius Geis.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby.
Really
I was off by a week. Suck it, Nick.
You can't really expect much out of this Washington offense. Even like Terry McLaurin has taken a step back since Dwayne Haskins took over as quarterback. But he had 10 carries for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns yesterday. You kind of feel like that's a little bit of a blip just based on his yards per carry. He wasn't ripping off 12 yards with every run he got, but it was pretty cool to see him actually produce like that. And yeah, he almost cost me an L, so I'm going to give him the MVP and show him some respect for this week.
Yes, I very much support that. And it's just we love feel good stories on this podcast, and watching him after all of the injuries that he's had to overcome, get onto the field and score 2 touchdowns, it just brings joy to my heart. Warms up. Perfect time for the holidays. All right. Well, we're going to move on, and we have a very special show for you all today. And as such, we don't have time for our usual fantasy football tidbits. There's an award show for us to get to, and that is why we are all dressed in our finest black ties and tails. You can't see it, but just close your eyes and imagine that that's what we are wearing. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the 2019 Fantasy Football Awards for the Year show, also known as the FFARTYS. All right, we have a bunch of awards to hand out. We each have a winner for these awards, and I want to give credit where credit is due. This award ceremony is a collaborative effort amongst all of us. We had Clark chiming in with some of the phrasing for how these awards will be read. Jordan coming up with some of the awards himself. Myself contributing with the awards, and Nick. So let's start. Award number 1, we have the Hang In There Award, brought to you by Amazon, and that poster at your local dentist's office with the cat hanging on to a branch with just one paw. This award recognizes your stubbornness turned that bad pick that you should have dropped long, long ago into the I knew it all along ego stroke you so desperately need. Clark, let's start with you. Who is your winner for this prestigious award?
So this man is a favorite of the podcast. I know we've all supported him all year. It's tight end for the Minnesota Vikings, Kyle Rudolph. I knew that he was going to be that wonderful middle-of-the-road pick all season after scoring fewer than 2 points in every week until week 6. Kyle Rudolph has scored 8 or more points in the next 4 out of 5 weeks, averaging 9.5 points in that stretch. Past 5 weeks, he's about the tight end 6. So I was wrong about many, many things, and some would argue that I am still wrong about Kyle Rudolph, but I'm going to take a mini, not victory lap, but like little Princess Di hand wave to the crowd for sort of being okay in the ballpark about Kyle Rudolph.
That's a very good pick, Clark. I think that you did a really good job diagnosing how good this player is that I think is terrible, and bravo, sir. I'm looking at his stats now.
Oh, this was completely situation and not the player. So I think that you were definitely right on the player. And I don't know if we're doing mea culpa tonight, but we should so that I can round it out.
So you can correct the balances in the force.
Yeah, in a season of tight ends where, Gronk is gone, Travis Kelce lost Patrick Mahomes for a while, Zach Ertz's quarterback is still Carson Wentz. You just really needed like some consistency at the position, and he's not blowing the doors off by any means, but tight end 6 the past couple of weeks is good enough.
Yeah, that's legit, and someone who is readily available on waivers, so you could have gone added for complete free. And now is a benefit to your team as you head into the fantasy playoffs. Nick, do you have a rebuttal? Who is your Hang In There award for 2019?
Yeah. So I think I speak for everyone when I say that the answer should unanimously have been Duke Johnson Jr., but we didn't get to experience that. So that was really too bad. But for me, it's Leonard Fournette. And I know that he obviously did not take anywhere near as long as Devontae Parker to truly, really come into his own as a dual threat player. Not that Parker's that, but you get what I'm saying. He just had a down year last year, and there were a lot of injury concerns with him. But I was pounding the table for like this. He actually is in the best shape of his life, and he actually is being used differently. And John DeFilippo threw on first down to running backs more than any other team in the league when he was running the Eagles offense. That they're, that the table was set for a big year. Now the touchdown regression unfortunately hasn't hit, but that's just such a big variable. You follow the yardage and the catching production, and the dude's got both. And it's been cool to watch him come into his own here. Chris Carson just got knocked out by Jacob Hollister.
Oy. Yeah, he's a great pick too, because with running backs of that pedigree, it's so easy when, in terms of where you drafted them, it's so easy 3-4 weeks in to be like, okay, this guy's not producing. I'm going to sell him. I'm going to try to sell and, try to recuperate something. And if you've held on to him this long and then he starts, playing well and you're able to benefit from him, that's a testament to you as a fantasy owner to be patient and to let your team develop before making rash moves.
This won't be the last award that Leonard Fournette gets tonight. He's going to be cleaning up at the FFARTYS, but
Ooh.
yeah, love the pick for a guy that you should have held on to.
Yeah, Nick, first of all, you're like 15 seconds ahead of me on the broadcast, so please keep that in mind. Don't spoil things for me. I rail against the Jaguars not being good, and they have continued to not be good. But Fournette has proven relatively durable this year, and folks that, were just pounding the table, taking him in the second, third round this year have been duly rewarded. So that was a really nice call.
Jordan, who's your nominee / winner for this award? Really, winner for this award.
So my personal winner for this award would have looked better a week ago, but he was fine this week. Is Sam Darnold. I talked about him a little bit last week. It was a tough beat if you picked up Sam Darnold hoping for that second year leap, and then you suffered through 5 weeks of mono. And then the New England game looked like, oh shit, maybe he should go back on IR and have mono for the rest of the season. But he had been solid otherwise since then. And I think he's provided some pretty solid quarterback play, especially when you look around the league. And there's been some instances where on other teams there isn't quite as much consistency. You think of the Jaguars we just talked about. The Panthers where Kyle Allen looked good and then suddenly he doesn't, and like the Broncos, they've had their issues alone, but Sam Darnold has been pretty solid. He's a young quarterback. You hope that continues next year, and I hope he thrives in spite of Adam Gase. That's still hard to determine, but hopefully he takes another leap next year.
There's still some more to look forward to with him, given that they've got Miami this week. After that, you're probably gonna have to dump him to the bench because he's got Baltimore and Pittsburgh on the way. But he is so good, and I echo your sentiments, Jordan. I really hope that he does not get broken by Adam Gase.
Yeah,
I think he is in prime position to win this award next year.
Ooh, maybe a repeat.
If he does bad next year, just wait for him, and then in a couple seasons, he'll be on the Tennessee Titans and start doing really well.
It's going to replace Phillip Rivers in a few years.
Right. That's how it goes for AFC East quarterbacks. They just end up on the Titans and then play really well. Sorry. My winner for this award, we already talked on him. I have to do it. I wish that it was AJ Green. I wish that AJ Green had gotten this award because, God damn it, I held on to him for as long as I could on my bench, hoping that he was going to come back and make a glorious return for the Bengals. But it shall not be. Instead, Darius Geis held him through injury, had him on my bench for this entire period where it's will he play, won't he play, what can he do when he comes back for Washington? And then the last 3 weeks, he's cemented himself as that future running back for the team. He's supplanted Adrian Peterson, and I had him as a starter this week, and I benefited greatly. He gave me everything I wanted. So Darius Geis, I hung in there, you hung in there, and now we are benefiting together.
Yeah, completely related, Jordan. My nephew lost it when I brought up the Washington breadsticks. So fantastic branding.
Nice.
That's the only Redskins talk I have. Go guys. It's tough because I've wanted him to be good, and I've been there with you saying that he is good, but the future looks so bleak for Washington. I don't know. As the NFL, things can turn around quickly, but Geis looks like he is a very talented player.
Yeah. And just holding on to him.
Yeah. I'm not going to be optimistic that he repeats this performance. Maybe he can do. I mean, Carolina's run defense is bad.
Is garbage.
Is really bad. Green Bay is like so. The Philadelphia is going to be friggin' brutal in Week 15. I mean, and what are they doing playing him? Like, I understand that you need to develop a guy, but the dude he had 3 surgeries to clear up his surgery in the offseason. He had to have another one in season. You're not playing for anything. Get your talented young player just healthy. Just let him rehab. Why is he on this friggin' organization? It's so stupid.
It's true.
Breadstick's gonna breadstick.
Breadstick on breadstick.
That's the thing about Washington too, is that on offense and defense, it always seems like they get some pretty talented players. Like they got good pieces now on offense, like Geis, McLaurin, even Kelvin Harmon has started to get some playing time and has looked pretty decent. But it's like you're kind of like, who cares? Because it's Washington, and they're probably going to figure out a way to ruin these players anyway.
All right. Well, there you go. Award number 1 in the books. And now we move on to our second award for the evening. The Kid Vomiting on a Six Flags Roller Coaster Award, given to the player who flung you up, down, all around with his every volatile game. Nick, we'll start with you. Who is your winner for this award this year?
For me, it's Latavius Murray. Entering the season, I really thought that he was going to be much more of a Mark Ingram than not. And all he has been thus far, really, at least box score wise, is just a really, really good handcuff. And that I thought this dude was like an every week flex option, almost regardless of matchup. Obviously that is not the case. And all of the teams that I had him on, I dropped him long ago.
He's a perfect example of just the kind of like, he would have big games and then you're like, great, now he's going in my starting lineup. And then he would just give you utter duds. So you're like, okay, I'll take him out of my starting lineup. And then, of course, as soon as he gets on your bench, he gives you big games. And in that situation, I always find it's just best to be like, you know what? I'm going to move on. I'm going to replace you with someone who's maybe doesn't have your ceilings, but at least just has a pretty consistent floor. You're someone who has a second story floor as opposed to a basement floor.
Yeah, I've been really surprised that the running back touchdowns in New Orleans have just vanished.
Yeah.
Terrible year for Kamara, honestly.
There's more on that to come.
Stay tuned. Yeah.
Stay tuned for more awards. Jordan, who's your child vomiting on a Six Flags roller coaster award going to tonight?
So this biggest roller coaster player should be playing tonight, but guess what? He's not. It's Adam Thielen. When he's played, he's been elite. He's been really good despite the early season, like that 3 weeks to a month when Kirk Cousins was throwing ducks and throwing 9 times a game, all of which were ducks anyway. But like the injuries and the won't he playing status before the game time decision. Oh, he gets out there against Kansas City. Nah, he plays for like 9 snaps and re-injures himself. So that has just been a roller coaster for anybody who picked him to be the wide receiver 1. And it's been a tough look, not because he just sucked. It's just, you never know week in and week out whether or not he's going to play. And that's just really annoying. And you can't trade a guy like that because everybody else is looking at the same shit. Like, oh, is he actually going to play?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I've always been way lower. I actually almost considered Thielen as being someone that I need to apologize for, because he's so outrageously talented, but I'm just such a non-believer in the passing game options in this offense because of the way that the team is run, that Thielen was just on my do not draft list, as was Diggs. Overall it's just a damn bummer.
Yeah, because you're right, Jordan. When he's been on the field and healthy, I mean, he's one of the best fantasy options out there at receiver. And so just the health factor has really kind of brought him down this year and has killed you. And the fickleness of his health, where it's like he's had a nagging hamstring injury for like the last 3 weeks, and just kind of suddenly was like, oh, by the way, he's not playing Monday night. And you're like, oh, great, thank you. Thanks for telling me that on a Sunday after my lineup is set and everyone's played. Great job, Vikings. My winner for this award is another wide receiver, one who I thought would be the universal pick for this, but he has not been so far. I got to give it to Mike Evans, who has been almost the definition of a roller coaster. He's had some very high highs, but he's also given you just absolutely nothing. And I have it all in front of me. I have PPR stats rounded to the nearest single digit. 5, 10, 45, 19, 0, 20, 43, 36, 12, and 10, 9, 9. Which you have you have 1 0 in there. You got a 5 and a couple 9s and a 10. It's more so to me that Mike Evans will either give you massive games or give you games. And that's not what I look for as a wide receiver one. I want my wide receiver one to give me a baseline, very high level. And Mike Evans isn't doing that at a consistent basis that you can trust. And so I think he's flung any owner around plenty enough to make you have a stomach lurch.
Yeah, so in my 2 leagues of record, I have Mike Evans. At the beginning of the year, I was touting Mike Evans as amazing, and he is the wide receiver 3. So that's great, but he is kind of the poster child for this award. He hasn't been bad, and I think the swings at the beginning of the year have corrupted my thinking into thinking that he's just doing great or horribly. He's evened out a little bit, but the 0
is hard to ignore.
Are real tough, and he's just had a string of games here with fewer than 10 points in ESPN scoring, and for the number 3 wide receiver to be giving you that is just disappointing. So I like the pick.
Yeah, I got to push back on here. I mean, he's been remarkably consistent, and like if we're in any sort of modern half point PPR or PPR scoring, like four balls per game for 4 games straight, and prior to that, like double-digit catches. I will not be poo-pooing the overall wide receiver 3 in fantasy.
0.
So shame on you guys.
A 0.
A literal
a
0.
3 in scoring.
I can't agree that he's been just utter disappointment, but in the nature of the
I never said this is an utter disappointment award. We got a different award for that.
Earlier in the season, it was pretty much well, shit, Mike, are you going to give me 25 points this week, or are you going to give me a goose egg? That's pretty tough to gauge. So you really had to hope you had a second wide receiver that could split the difference there.
Yeah, this isn't the most disappointing award. We have that coming. This is the most volatile.
It's the roller coaster, which roller coasters are fun.
Right. You enjoy the roller coaster. You ride the roller coaster. It takes you pretty high, but it also drops you pretty low, sometimes even below the earth. If it's a really cool roller coaster with a tunnel built into it. Clark, who's your
sometimes you lose your wallet.
sometimes you get hit by a bird. Clark, who's your winner for this award?
This one will be short. Jordan mentioned them earlier. Just the Jets. Fuck the Jets. I kept playing with fire in the Jets this year, thinking I was going to be able to crack the code, and it has just been miserable for me to try to. The Jets. I just picked the Jets.
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell and matchup wise, Ryan Griffin have really only been the pieces. Well, and actually Jameson Crowder. But anyway.
But even then, all those guys have had highs and lows and been very hard to gauge what this offense is going to look like on a regular basis.
Yeah. By the way, I gave you my disappointment question, not the other answer. So I'll have a different answer for you later.
Just spitball it.
Just fuck Latavius Murray. Not really, but I am really frustrated.
To add to the Jets take, even the defense has been incredibly up and down. Sometimes they'll actually give you good games where you're like, maybe I should pick up the Jets. But then in other games, you're like, oh, this is dumb. They have games literally of 19.5 points, 15 against New England somehow, 19, 12.5, 16. They put together some pretty decent games that makes them the position rank 7 on defenses, according to ESPN. But yeah, they've been incredibly up and down everywhere.
Yeah.
I know everyone cares about my fantasy team. I need Stephon Diggs and DK Metcalf to do nothing tonight. And then I'm in the playoffs in my big money league. So fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. NFL.com tells me Stephon Diggs took a jet sweep for 27 yards. But
yes, he did. I need fewer than 23 points in PPR.
Oh, okay. All right, let's move on to award number 3, the Toyota Tundra Best Pickup Award, brought to you by Toyota and Frito Pie. This award recognizes the best waiver wire pickup of the 2019 season. Now, you can take this in 2 different ways. You can take this as the best waiver wire pickup in general for fantasy football, or for your own personal self. Which waiver wire pickup are you most proud of or most happy with? Jordan, we'll start with you. Who's your winner for this award this year?
Oh man, where do I start?
Where
here?
to begin?
My award, you know what? Since Clark did Jets by committee, basically here, I feel much better about what I have jotted down here. My best waiver wire ad has been tight end by committee, and it starts out with my boy Will Dissly early on in the season, putting up numbers. Got a good couple games out of him. Got a couple good games out of Darren Fells for the Houston Texans. Following that up with another couple of good games out of Ryan Griffin, who had been solid. And then this past week is the only week, but he's going to get a little bit of shine here, and that's Tyler Higbee for the Los Angeles Rams. I almost said St. Louis, who garnered 10 targets somehow. So yeah, shout out to all the tight ends that weren't starters week in and week out, but they came in and they did their duty.
It's a big award for the tight end position in fantasy football, which has often been ridiculed and critiqued. This is a big moment for them. They've really peaked. Good job, Jordan.
If you played it out right, then you had some solid tight end play all year. You know?
Those guys at their highs were all giving you pretty solid production. Tight end 5 or better, I would think.
Poor Dissly. Gosh, did Seattle could just get a tight end that can tie his shoes and stay healthy for 16 games, it'd be the tight end 3.
25
100%.
yards and 2 touchdowns. My waiver wire pickup of the year is Devontae Parker, for all the reasons that we already touched on. Dude,
And we called it.
The guy is he's a wide receiver 1 every week, regardless of matchup.
Who knew?
That's simple. If he's in your league, go get him and then start him right friggin' now. I'd go double check his schedule again, but I don't think that there's anything terribly in his path.
They might have one more against the Patriots? ?
But that only matters for Ryan Fitzpatrick. It doesn't matter for him.
It's true.
No, but so they have the Jets, the Giants, and the Bengals. Can you draw up a better schedule?
Devontae's about to just go off.
Yeah.
I can already picture myself in March trying to pick up Devontae Parker in all my dynasty leagues. Just
every dynasty
offering up a couple draft picks, like, hey, let me get this Devontae Parker real quick.
Here, take Todd Gurley.
Anyone who held Devontae Parker in a dynasty league at this point is never letting him go.
Yes.
Yeah, Parker is my ad as well. I picked him up twice and moved him for Mike Evans. And not straight up, but as a package deal for Mike Evans. Every week Mike Evans does well. I feel like that was a great move. The past couple of weeks, I've really missed old Parker on my team. Talented, playing big with a quarterback that gives you an opportunity to win those jump balls. So it's good to see him. Good to see him playing well after, at least according to fantasy Twitter. When players don't do something wrong but just catch a bunch of flack from fantasy Twitter, I really like to see them perform well. They probably don't care, but it's a nice story.
Yeah, we're all about nice stories on the pod. My winner for this award, for the best pickup award, DJ Chark, who went undrafted in probably every single league out there, unless you played with some super diehard Jaguars fan, and now is the wide receiver 5 in fantasy, and has just been great this season, regardless of whatever quarterback's back there. And now Gardner Minshew's back, baby, which means DJ Chark is going to be even better. So I got him in one of my leagues and was very happy about that.
I'm loving watching Chark play on my most hated team with the mustache, Gardner Minshew. Glad the Jags have come back to their senses and put the more exciting Minshew in there, because we all know the Jaguars aren't good at football, but they're a lot more fun to watch with old Minshew in there.
Oh, hell yeah. We got 3 more awards to get to, but before we do, we're going to take a quick advertisement break because this award show does not pay for itself. All right, we are back, and now we are into our final 3 awards for the 2019 fantasy football season. We'll start with the Dennis Green Hitting Expectations Award. This award is given to a player who proved that they were exactly who we thought they were. And I'll start us off this round. And I will say my winner for this award is Damian Williams, who we spent most of this podcast kind of ridiculing and talking about how he was not worth a second round pick. You know, he was like going as a running back 1, like a top 12 running back, which is not at all what he should have been going. And we had said that, and he has missed 3 games this season and yet is still running back 44, non-PPR running back 43, and has only scored over 20 PPR points once. He's exactly who I thought he'd be, which is a middling running back in fantasy, not at all living up to the expectations that people had on him. So, Damian Williams, congratulations on being exactly who we thought you were.
I like it, Pete. I had forgotten about him, so proves your point.
So,
yeah, I was so torn on him. So I didn't like him as a first or second round pick, but third round I was like, oh my God, hell yeah, give me this guy in every draft. But that being said, something we did talk about very briefly in like July when we were breaking this down was there's a very prominent, globally known high stakes player named Nelson Sousa. And one of the things that he lives by is that the following season, he does not draft a running back who has been like kind of a journeyman and breaks out due to injury on a new team. And it's this whole thing of like, they couldn't get it done where they were. They couldn't get it done in the new place. They just happened to get the job because of an injury. And now, I guess in that case, it was a suspension, but you get the point. He didn't win the job. It was given to him in a very good offense. And he just doesn't touch those players. And I think it's super fascinating. I'm going to keep that in mind as I move forward and try to learn from this lesson. Because I definitely was like third round. Yeah, give me Damian Williams.
Yeah, this is an instance of looking at, yes, the offense is really good, but so are the players. I think we all got a little bit trigger happy on the waiver wire early in the season, trying to snag up some Kansas City wide receivers as well once Tyreek Hill got injured. But those guys aren't as good as Tyreek Hill or Kareem Hunt. Otherwise, they would have been in that position long before this season because of injury. So, yeah, Damian Williams was a tough break if you drafted him super early.
Yeah, another fantasy update for everyone really concerned here. Both people who I need to not do well have been stopped at like the 3-yard line. So far, so good. The insufferable
happy boy. Well, how'd you continue, Clark? Give us your winner for this award, for the Hitting Expectations Award.
This was pretty obvious, but Travis Kelce, he was just obviously the tight end 1, and the performance hasn't been lights out, smashing, unbelievable, but the tight end landscape is barren, like we said it was at the beginning of the year. And Travis Kelce was drafted as the tight end 1 and is the tight end 1. He hasn't had as big of a year, but if someone told me, hey, with the 11th pick in the draft, you can get the tight end 1 guaranteed, I'd take that instead of taking the chance on AJ Green or Julio or someone who's been a little bit more perplexing this year. So boring but safe, the old Travis Kelce.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Clark, you still watching that stream?
Yes.
Okay. Just checking.
Oh no.
Anyway, yeah, I dig your Travis Kelce take.
Nick, what's your winner for this award?
My winner for this award is Joe Mixon. It's not necessarily a talent thing. I don't like him at all as a person, but the situation that he was in was just so bad. Like their line had begun to improve. The jury was out on Zach Taylor, but then their line exploded with injuries, and it was like, oh my God, how are they going to use it? One, how is the coach going to use him? But two, how are they going to be able to use him? Like, it's something like 80% of rushing yards is determined by how many people are in the box. But offensive line is a big factor in a lot of those situations as well. With no offensive line, how is he ever going to succeed? So anyway, he was going off the board at like the beginning of the second round, and I helped a number of people put together their draft boards, and each one of them just had a big red line through his name that said "Do not draft." So yeah, he is who I thought he is.
Yeah, that's a good call. I wasn't down on Mixon this year. If I've looked back at my old ranks for this, but I wasn't as high as him as a lot of other folks were, so I just ended up not getting him. That sometimes you want to. It's hard to balance drafting the person versus the situation. But sometimes we just nail the situation. The Bengals are bad, and they got worse as the year went on. So really good call on Mixon.
Jordan, wrap us up on this award. Who's your winner?
Oh, my winner, I'm going to kind of cheat because I want to do a whole team thing again, but it's going, and I was going to take this entire time to talk about Lamar Jackson, because guess what? Was right about that one, but I mean, that's not a novel idea anymore. I want to talk about Baker Mayfield a little bit. Everybody was, well, not everybody, that's not fair. A lot of pundits, and if you were just watching standard sports media, a lot of people in the offseason were talking about how the Cleveland Browns were the best collection of talent in the AFC, that they were going to run through possible AFC conference championships. But in the beginning of the season, I said, you know what? I'm still not buying it. They don't have an offensive line. We've seen this like a million times before, where good teams are put together with the skill position players and the weapons, and it doesn't always pan out, especially right away. There's usually a little bit of a learning curve here. And I think Baker, especially early on in the season, was not what you expected him to be. He only has one multi-touchdown or 1 3-touchdown game and 2 2-touchdown games. And those happened in the last couple of weeks here. Other than that, it's been a little bit tough to see him as an every week starter. And that's just been a product of a team that I think they buckled a little bit under the high expectations, but even I overestimated how well they did. I thought they'd still be a 9-win team, but they've been even worse than that. So the Cleveland Browns, I'm sorry if you invested a whole lot in them other than like Nick Chubb, and Jarvis Landry has been fine, but everywhere else has been a struggle.
Yeah, no, this is, I mean, props to you for staying away from them. I got lured in hardcore. I was roped into the offseason narratives, to what they were able to do at the end of last season, and thinking that Freddie Kitchens was the answer and knew what he was doing. All of this has been lies. And so I had to sell my Odell shares. I had to sell my Baker Mayfield shares. I still have my Nick Chubb shares. But yeah, I had to separate myself from the Browns offense after buying way too much of it. So props to you for being able to be like, you know what? No, that's not those aren't my expectations for it, and then staying away from them. You deserve to hand out that award to them, Jordan. Well done.
Yeah, I like that pick. Nothing to add, but that's a good one.
All right, let's move on to our second to last award, and now we are getting to the big awards. Everyone, you sit through best makeup, and you sit through best sound, and you sit through all of these, and now we're getting to best picture and best supporting actor. Those are the 2 awards that everyone comes for. No one cares about leads. They only care about supporting roles and who won best picture. We are going to start with the Billy Carter Westworld Season 2 Every Adam Sandler Movie Not Named Happy Gilmore Award. This honor is bestowed upon the player who has most disappointed you this year. And Clark, we'll start with you on this one. Who is the winner for this award?
Alvin Kamara has just absolutely killed my soul this year. He has been injured and good enough to start, but just not what we expected him to be. Oh man, it's just been a rough year for Kamara, and he is definitely my biggest disappointment.
So I want to just springboard off what Clark's saying and kind of make this a larger discussion here. So my other answer for the like who treated you well and then treated you badly, it was juggling the performances of Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott, who I had on almost every team, and they mostly were awesome. But there were sometimes when you'd start one because they had a good matchup, and the other one had a bad one, and Dak just threw for however many points against Buffalo last week while Kyler hit the bed. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the fact that my disappointment is Latavius Murray. And Clark, I think that this plays in really well with everything that you just said. We talked about in the offseason, Evan Silva's drunken encounter. Sean Payton was drunk when he looked Evan in the eye and said, "Alvin soft." And that's why he had never been giving him full workloads. And we see now, like, you know, they really tried to load his plate up, and he got hurt. And he hasn't really been that good this year, at least lately in the box score. And I just can't believe that they haven't opted to give Murray. What's funny is, like, more touches for Latavius Murray seems to indicate more production for Alvin Kamara. When he is fresh, when he is healthy, he is much more effective.
Yeah, my biggest disappointment, and in my own head, I'm calling this award my number one boy award, because even though he disappointed me, Alvin Kamara is still my number one boy, and I love him. But the only person on that Saints offense that seems to be eating is Michael Thomas, and that's because if you throw the football in his direction, he's going to bring it in. Alvin Kamara is the number 12 running back in ESPN leagues, which is like not anything to, you know, raise your nose up against, but as somebody who was top 3 pick, possibly top 1, especially if you picked him over guys like Christian McCaffrey or some of the other running backs, even Leonard Fournette, who I'll talk about in a minute. It's just been a tough look, because he's somebody that you would expect to have a little bit higher of a floor than what he's had. And being the number one guy is, you know, you were expecting a little bit more, but maybe, you know, if it's true that he is soft, then it might be, especially for dynasty leagues, you know, already looking into next season, might be somebody you want to unload high.
I don't want to, step away from Alvin Kamara. I think he's certainly deserving of this award, but I also have to give some love, I guess, in a certain way to Odell Beckham. And I touched on him when we talked about the Browns offense, but Odell is somehow with Baker Mayfield producing worse than he was with noodle arm Eli Manning throwing 5 billion interceptions. So I don't know how that pans out, but it seemed like a lock, surefire pick that as soon as Odell got out of the Giants, that he was going to be even better than he was with the Giants, and that has not proven to be true. And there's no way if you got Odell onto your team that you didn't give up a king's ransom to get him, both in either the draft or via trade, if you bought low on him thinking, well, he's got to get better at some point. And so he was a big disappointment to me because I had him on multiple teams and he let me down. So, Odell, you deserve this award, but so does Alvin Kamara.
I changed my answer because the correct one is Odell Beckham Jr. We were talking about whether or not you had in his range of outcomes Randy Moss's record.
We thought I remember having that exact discussion on the podcast, being like, could Odell break Randy Moss's single season record?
We should bank on it, but I don't know. Maybe he could score 23 TDs. The problem is the Nick Chubb might do that.
We should. We should
Beckham.
Yeah, we should get drunk and listen to our old podcast about the Browns and just be like, wow, these are preposterous takes that we are throwing out right now.
No, I mean, the process was so right. We just didn't realize that Freddie Kitchens was a fucking donkey. And did you guys see the interview that came out a month ago of one of his assistants? Where all of his assistants he just cleaned house, kicked them all out. And this guy was like, yeah, we all ran his fucking offense. And he details what him and I think it was 2 or 3 other assistants did. But he basically was like, he did this, I did this. Kitchens did nothing when he took over.
No,
he delegated like a mastermind, and then so that he wouldn't have power struggle, he fired all of them, and then didn't give Todd Monken any say over the offense.
What are we doing? What are we doing here, Browns? Let's keep being the jokes in the butts of the NFL. Why don't we?
Yeah, despite all the Baker slander I was slinging around just before, you thought that. And they have been better than the New York Giants of last year and the year before. And Baker has still been better than Eli Manning, who has been, propped up on posts behind the center and still throwing the football. But it was still not good for Odell, which is just, I don't know, you expected more.
Yeah, the grass is not always greener on the other side, apparently.
what I find so funny here is that, Clark, you are the one who I remember being very anti-Browns. Like, every time we talk about Browns, you'd be like, I hate to say this. And Clark, you're all over the place, man. You're saying that you didn't like them, but that also they were going to win 9 games.
Yes.
It's all
See,
on
if
one
you talk
side
out
or
of
the
both
other.
sides of your mouth, then you're
One of those sides is going to be right. You nailed it.
I was looking at my old ranks, and I remember being down on Odell, and I have him as my wide receiver 3 at number 11. And I remember people saying that I was down on Odell.
God,
So it's
our
I
expectations.
mean, I was wrong
for
too.
him.
I thought wide receiver 3, that's amazing. I just
Yeah.
thought for sure there's no way that someone could mess this up. But
All right.
live and you learn.
Before
Entered the Cleveland Browns.
some of us actually should probably put Juju on this list.
So I thought
he would
about
have been on my Denny Green list. I forgot about him.
Yeah. Clark certainly was on the Juju train from the get-go.
Well, so I don't like it. I take no pride in being right for the wrong reasons, right? So I picked Juju to be like the wide receiver 6, and near drafts, everyone started saying how that was unimaginable.
Clark, you were lower.
You had him in like
you
the
got
teens.
this right. You had him lower than
Stop
6.
being modest,
We were
Clark.
talking about him. Yeah, we had him at 6. Get out of here.
Wide receiver 17. Okay, sorry.
Yes! That's much
Okay,
better.
Yeah, so
So modest.
I don't want to be right for the wrong reasons, right? Like 2 of his quarterbacks got hurt. He missed a couple of games, and so that's not why I thought Juju was going to be a middling performer. So, yeah, take no pride in that.
All right. The final award will end on a high note.
Wide receiver 10. Don't ever go back and look at your ranks. That's a bad idea.
That's a bad practice. The final award for our for the Farties, the Fantasy Football Awards for the Year show, we have the Dale Earnhardt Victory Lap Award. This distinguished award can only rightfully be bestowed by oneself, to oneself, and for oneself. Nicholas, start us off. Who are you taking a victory lap over?
I went back and forth on this between guys like Miles Sanders, who, his yardage was always kind of there, but he's really kind of coming into his own now, or Devin Singletary. But I think I'm just going to be obvious with this. I built myself up just now, and now I'm going to give it.
That's a classic Nick move. I'm going to give other examples about how good I am, and then be like, but this is the real one. I love it.
Yeah. Now people are more impressed than they expected they would be. I had Christian McCaffrey as the overall running back 1 since like May, and I mean that's what he is. So like the comparison, I kept saying like he is our age, LaDainian Tomlinson. That is what he is. Don't bother picking. Like you're fine if you want to pick the other ones, but I would very much recommend not doing that. Go get Christian McCaffrey. Eddie's been incredible, and now next year he probably should be picked at like running back 12 because his legs are just going to fall off.
How is the 1,000 pace going? Are we approaching it? Is it possible?
McCaffrey is at 1,167 yards rushing and 644 receiving, according to FF today.
Okay. Well,
it's still possible if he switches to strictly receiver for the next couple games.
Yeah, he's on pace to finish with 859 receiving yards, which is sadly quick math, 141 yards short.
Honestly, the dude could absolutely go like over 100 yards receiving per game. I think the bigger question is probably just, will the Panthers
want to do that?
Playing him,
right?
Yeah,
right. No,
I can see him not playing in week 17.
Yeah, which is good to know from a fantasy standpoint.
Week 17? Come on, Pete.
Oh, sorry. Jordan, who are you taking a victory lap for?
Well, I've been taking a season-long victory lap for Will Dissly, but that's just me because I'm sad that he got hurt. So anyway, I will settle for Leonard Fournette winning this award. In the beginning of the season, I was like, you know what? let's just go in on Leonard Fournette, buying a little bit that he is in good shape and will be healthier than he has been. I liked that at the time. This isn't true now, but at the time, I was like, Nick Foles is an upgrade for sure over Blake Bortles. So that play action, play calling that they brought in there will benefit Leonard Fournette if he truly was working on his pass catching, which, I mean, it looked like he has over the course of the season, that he was just going to be better. Did not see Mustache Mania coming in and helping ease the load off of Leonard Fournette from carrying the team, but he's Fournette's currently the RB8, I believe, in ESPN League, so he's higher than Alvin Kamara, who we talked about before, and it's good value if you got him in the second or third round, which I don't think he might have been people's RB1s drafted in the first round, but he definitely wasn't for me. He hasn't like broken the league by any means. He hasn't had any sort of great Christian McCaffrey, like, oh my God, did you see what he just did games? But he's had a really high floor, and he's virtually been a workhorse running back in a league where those aren't a thing anymore. So he's been very good. I'm enjoying my Leonard Fournette season.
Yeah.
I
he's
have Fournette in
proven back for you.
I have him in every all leagues but one where I couldn't acquire him via trade. I'm awesome. What were you saying, Pete?
Oh no, I was saying that he's been great. He's took a little bit of time for him to get, the gears running again, but he reminds me a lot of Derrick Henry this season, in the sense that like he kind of takes a little bit of time into the season for him to get rolling, and now that he's rolling full, like he's just rattling off big time fantasy performances.
Maybe I should have gone with Derrick Henry instead of Christian McCaffrey, because I was right about him too.
You were right about him, weren't you, Nicholas?
Derrick Henry, the Adonis of football.
Who could ever badmouth Derrick Henry?
Nobody. I mean, I think we all saw that one coming.
Clark, who are you taking a victory lap for?
I appreciate you guys being so polite and saving this one for us to celebrate. But it's Lamar Jackson. I think the narrative that I've seen start to float around out there is that everyone knew Lamar Jackson was going to be the man that he's become. Bullshit. He was going in like the 9th and 10th rounds of drafts. People were talking about his playoff game and his rushing in his rookie season as if that's all that he was ever going to be. And he is now the QB1 that you got for free, and that, we're not an incredibly disagreeable podcast, but, Nick mentioned Leonard Fournette and Derrick Henry. Like, I thought he was just wrong on those guys. I'm like, we know who they are. They're not great, and they're going to continue to not be great. But we were all on board with Lamar Jackson being fantastic. And so that one's just been so much fun to watch all year.
So much fun.
And next year, I've learned my lesson. No disagreeing with Nick about running backs. So.
I would like
I'm good at.
I would like to read you guys a caption from an article I wrote back in August 28th, 2019. This is my top 5 league winners. And at the very bottom, going at QB 13, ADP 9th round with the 8th pick in it, as the time that I wrote this, Lamar Jackson. There is 37.4% of me that believes Jackson will be the QB1 this year. So watch out to all you crazy people spending a second-round pick on Patrick Mahomes. And the great thing is, there's an ellipses between there because there's a whole bunch of more crap I wrote. And the great thing is that he's cheap enough that you can draft him as your QB2, so there's really no excuse not to draft him. Don't let him fall into someone else's team. You'll regret it. Round of applause to this podcast for being on the Lamar Jackson hype train from the get-go. Everyone else who pretends that this was like some foregone conclusion that everyone knew Lamar was going to be even a top 5 fantasy quarterback is lying out of their asshole. We were the ones who were on it. There were, I'm sure, other smart fantasy heads who were on it too, but we have been on it forever, and we deserve to take this victory lap.
Yeah, we were not alone, but we were not the majority of fantasy fans either.
No.
So I had somebody post to me on Twitter because I was talking about Lamar Jackson, of course, and I was going to shout his name out, but his name is just Numbers, which is not like actual digits. It's just the word Numbers.
Somehow that's even better.
He said he benched Lamar Jackson this week in favor of Mahomes and yada, yada. Conversation devolved into like, oh, well, that's great that you have Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. That's good drafting and or trading. And he's like, well, neither. I picked up Lamar off the waivers after week 1 from the block. And I'm like, that just further proves the point that nobody in the beginning of the season believed in Lamar Jackson as much as they do now. I think a lot of people are trying to save face by now saying, well, look at Lamar Jackson, or like, oh, only Booger McFarland and Bill Polian were the ones saying that Lamar Jackson should play wide receiver. No, we had an entire news cycle for several months about Lamar Jackson and how people were, either questioning whether or not he can play quarterback in the NFL or telling people that he should switch to wide receiver. He's a tremendous athlete, and I'm sure he would excel at several positions on a football field. But Lamar Jackson is a quarterback through and through. And I mean, shout out to this podcast for being one of the only people, or one of the only groups of people that saw it. And again, I want to bring up my Cleveland Browns point again, is that people were tending to gestate between the AFC North champion being Cleveland Browns, Pittsburgh Steelers. I picked the Baltimore Ravens because I believed in Lamar Jackson that much. Shades on for Jack's Capital. End of rant.
This is a good egogasm podcast we got going here. But
why do you think you have these award shows?
Pardon my my anti-mainstream media fervor here, but the revisionist history going on with Lamar Jackson, with people saying that like, no, not there weren't actually very many of us that thought he should switch positions or that he like couldn't develop as a quarterback. Like,
it's such hot garbage.
We see you.
It's
all
insane.
of you are saying that no, he didn't say it either. Did you? No, I didn't say it. Like, shut the fuck up. You guys fucked up. You didn't do your jobs well. Everybody else fucked up, and like, I'm sick and tired of Albert Breer, 1, being in my life at all, but 2, doing this like mea culpa for every man in media all the fucking time. People were wrong about this, and they deserve to be shamed publicly for it.
Well, I prefer to say it's okay to be wrong. We're guessing about predicting the future. You should just admit when you're wrong and try to learn from it. What is shameful is when you act like it didn't happen and that you're perfect. That's a friggin' shame. I've already cursed a lot on the pod, so.
Yeah, sorry, I've been keeping it cool lately.
Thanks. I'm picking up your slack.
Got to get that explicit rating.
Yeah, predicting the future is hard. Don't act like you're right all the time. Right. It is infuriating. And we're talking about sports, and this happens all the time in all of our media.
And you know, we talked about our awards for players that disappointed us, because guess what? At the start of the season, we got on this podcast and we said, hey, X person is going to do super well. And now we're sitting here 13 weeks later saying, guess what? We fucked up.
We fucking said Odell Beckham was going to beat Randy Moss's touchdown record. I have a distinct memory of this conversation of me being like, it could happen. And it entirely did not.
And I mind-bogglingly did not believe that Kyle Rudolph was supposed to fucking roster.
Nobody's perfect, Nick. It's okay.
All right. Well, there you go. That's come to the conclusion to the Farties, 2019 Farties. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We will be back at you on Thursday to cover the week 14 starts and sits. Got to get you not only into the fantasy playoffs, but now you got to be winning fantasy playoffs. So we'll help you there. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, the whole 9 yards, Fake Teams podcast channels where you'll find us. Follow us on Twitter at RB1 Podcast. You can follow myself at Pete M. Rogers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark, Jordan at Jordan _Smith 27, and Nick at Ginger _ Nick without a big K. It's been a while since I've had to do that. We will be back at you Thursday. Until then, peace.